Language, Learning and Politics, Sounds and Symbols, published by HaLingoGringo, June 30th, 2024 at 12:01 a.m. What are scripts? When we hear the word script, English thinkers probably think of a play, a teleprompter, or some sort of rehearsed performance in which the person reads from a physical manuscript. The idea is not actually too far off of what it means in language learning. The word manuscript essentially means handwritten words, which seems obvious. But what does just the word script mean? It means written. When we choose to learn languages, sometimes we choose to learn one that has a different alphabet than in English. For instance, in English, Spanish, Swedish, Romanian, Swahili, and countless other languages, we use the alphabet you see here in the post, the Roman alphabet, or the Roman script, or the Latin script. The script is probably the most common among languages worldwide. It is used on every continent, including Asia. Vietnamese uses the Latin script because the French had colonized Vietnam for a very long time. But Lingo, how do they share a common alphabet and sound so completely different? Well, the answer to that doesn't seem obvious. How did the Roman alphabet traverse the four corners of the globe, yet each language that uses it is distinctly different? It's actually a really simple answer. Symbols don't make sounds. No, really. The symbols that each language uses for its script, even if the alphabets are the same, simply represent a sound that the speaker makes in that language. When I see the letter Z in English, I know to interpret it as if it was making a zipper noise. Zzz, zzz. That's because in English, we make that Z sound, and we simply denote the sound with what we call the letter Z, pronounced Z outside of the US, Z in the US. However, when I look at Polish and I see the letter Z, I have to be careful to understand what sound the character represents in Polish. It is not the same sound as in English. In fact, it makes the zh sound. When I'm reading in Spanish, I know that the Z sound the Z character sounds like an S. It represents the S sound. Simply, in Spanish, the sound is denoted by the letter Z, zeta, pronounced zeta, is identical to the S sound. But these are all languages that use the Roman script, or the Latin script. So, what about scripts that are totally different? That's a great question, and I am so glad that you asked. Let's take some of the English letters and compare them to the Hebrew script. B denotes the B sound in almost every language that uses the symbol. However, in the Hebrew script, there is a different symbol to represent that exact same sound, bait. In Hebrew, this sound simply tells the reader to make the B sound, or the B sound. However, much like the A in English is an extremely versatile character, it represents that at least 4 sounds in English. Bait makes 2, B and V. It only makes the V sound when there is no dagesh, or dot in the center. Here's an example. Let's take the sentence, I am not home. In Hebrew, ani lo babait. Ani lo babait. This is the romanization of the Hebrew sentence below. You read Hebrew from right to left. Ani lo babait. Babait. Ani, I, lo, no, not, be, bait, at home. Be, the prefix be, means in or at. You can see that there are 2 bait symbols in that last word. They both make the B sound. Bait, again, is a prefix that means in or at. D also has a direct representation in Hebrew. To make the D sound in Hebrew, we use the character daled. Most people recognize this character in Hebrew by noticing that the bar across the top dangles over the right side of the vertical line. While the font in this post does not accurately represent the dangling, There is no other character that looks like it in Hebrew. Z also has a representation in Hebrew, Zayin. One always makes the Z sound when reading this character. If the Zayin has a very large apostrophe next to it, it makes the Z sound because that's a borrowed sound from other languages. H sounds would be represented by the character He. This symbol is a prefix that means the in Hebrew. T, last but not least, has two symbols that represent its sound in Hebrew, tet and tav. While they originally made two different sounds in Hebrew, modern Hebrew uses them to symbolize the same sound. So now that we understand that symbols do not make sounds, people do, let's circle back to the logic of it all and answer the question of why there are so many scripts. As we've seen with the characters He and Beit, they are sounds in Hebrew that mean full words. We have an identical concept in English. We use two letters to represent words that are full of meaning, that are essential to speaking English. We use the letter A as an object clarifier, an article. That means that when we want to talk about an object, we would say a thing. When we want to talk about ourselves, we make the I sound. I is a symbol in English that represents the self. I, ani, yo, yo. See, it's not so different than Hebrew. The symbols just look different. We use different sounds. I think now we understand the answer to why there are so many different scripts. One, different peoples use similar or identical sounds to mean different things. Thus, symbols simply represent the sounds that the people make in their languages. More simply, any symbol can represent any sound in any speech, or made in any speech. Speech precedes writing by several 100,000 years, if not millions of years, because speech is, as far as we know for certain, uniquely human. Unique humans with unique speech patterns and spoken languages give the chance to develop a writing system that will develop a script of symbols that represents the sounds unique to their languages. The Romans colonized large swaths of land from Proto-Europe to the Middle East. This is why Slavic language like Polish uses a Roman script instead of a script like Russian or Cyrillic script. But languages like Ukrainian and Russian do use the Cyrillic script or alphabet because Ukraine was historically part of Russia for centuries. This is not an endorsement of Russian propaganda suggesting that Ukraine should be under Russian control. It should be a sovereign nation. I am adding that in here and it will stay in the video. If you ever wondered how people speak a language with a writing system that is unfamiliar to you, it's actually quite straightforward. One, their script may not even be an alphabet like in English, and two, the sounds they make probably represent a different meaning than in English. So if you're curious about how language sounds, I highly recommend that you jump on YouTube or Google, search for an alphabet video in your target language, maybe try to mimic the sounds and see if it's something that interests you.